In the grand final of the first ever Hong Kong British Parliamentary Debating Championships 2014, in collaboration with Cornell, on opening government for the grand final, we have RC1.
Yeah.
On opening opposition, we have Raimondi. On closing government, we have PLKCKY1. And on closing opposition, we have Chips. My name is Sandeep. I will be your chair for this debate. With me on Edge panel, I don't know why the window sound is coming on. With me on Edge panel, I have Bo, Anthony, Reina, Chitra, Elton, and Katla, who's sitting in the third row, despite the fact that I said first two rows. Alright, on the motion, this House believes Edward Snowden deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Once I've sat down, I invite the Prime Minister to open the case for the government bench. One sec. Wait.
Sandeep is timing? Sandeep, are you timing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime.
Test the sound first.
Hello?
You might have to pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today as the Prime Minister of the government bench, will be supporting the motion, this House believes that Edward Snowden deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, as the Prime Minister of side government today, I'll be explaining the nature of the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll be explaining what Edward Snowden has done, why it's important, and furthermore, what he didn't do. Okay, so basically, what is the Nobel Peace Prize? We all know it's a prize given out by a non-governmental body. We see that it's to recognize not just work against violence, but the advancements towards progressive peace. So what do we really mean by progressive peace? We acknowledge that the Nobel Peace Prize is a prize. It recognizes that people have accomplished something. And what we see today on side government is that Edward Snowden has made significant advances to the upholding of democracy and openness and transparency around the world. So what we say today is that, okay, Edward Snowden has already fulfilled the objectives of the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, so basically, let's just take a step back and see what Edward Snowden has done. So basically what he did was expose NSA surveillance on American citizens. And not just his surveillance led to let's just say the snowballing of different discoveries around the world. We see today that his courageous decision to expose corruption and illegal actions by a government institution has led to more discoveries around the world of government institutions overstepping their power. And this is what we mean by progressive peace. Because Edward Snowden hasn't just leaked out a bunch of documents. He's enabled us to step into a more open, more transparent era where government institutions are not immune to criticism, and an era where they cannot overstep legal and personal boundaries. So we say from this perspective that Edward Snowden has helped protect individual liberties and individual rights, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, moving on to why is it actually important? Because what we basically see today, Edward Snowden didn't just leak out a bunch of documents because he felt like he could do it. He leaked them out because he felt he had a moral responsibility. And in the face of reprisals from the US government, from the NSA, and from other countries that he fled to, we see that he made an immensely courageous personal decision to expose these wrongdoings, to expose these injustices without thought for his personal safety and personal well-being. So from this effect, we can see from this example, we can see that he's. I'll take you in a second, sir. So from this example, we can see that he's already doing it not because he has any underhanded political agenda, but because he genuinely believes in the protection of individual liberties and individual rights. Yes, sir.
In that case, would we give a Nobel Peace Prize to soldiers who fight in wars and to Islamic terrorists who fight for what they believe in?
So basically what we're seeing today is that, okay, what we're saying today is that, okay, Edward Snowden did a great personal cost and great personal risk to protect the individual rights of citizens in their country, not to uphold any political agenda, ladies and gentlemen. So we see that he's different from Islamic soldiers and extremists in this regard. So basically, what did Edward Snowden didn't do? He didn't. Basically his exposure of these NSA overstepping its boundaries and overstepping its legal responsibilities is that we see it as a form of non-violent protest. We see it as an exposure of transparency. We see it today on the government bench. We see that Edward Snowden is a reformer, not an extremist, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the key difference in today's debate. We see that Edward Snowden today on side government is that what he basically did was that he no thank you ma'am. What he basically did was uphold the rights of individual citizens at great personal cost to himself. We've told you already about the nature of the Nobel Peace Prize, the significance that is his discoveries led for greater awareness and greater awareness to the problems in governmental institutions today. No, thank you, sir. So what we see that his actions have not just ended with him fleeing to Russia. We see that his actions have actually sparked a series of chain reactions, right, ladies and gentlemen? We see that there are more and more injustices being exposed, and it's not just one incident where the NSA is spying on its own people. We see that not only has Edward Snowden protected the individual liberties and the individual rights of people in his own country, we see that he's actually enabled more exposure of government injustices and government overstepping its powers. So what we see today, ladies and gentlemen, on side government is that basically, the nature of the Nobel Peace Prize, that it's not just to celebrate one finite achievement. It's to celebrate Edward Snowden's achievements and to work towards progressive peace. I've already told you what Edward Snowden has done at great personal cost to himself, without regard for his own safety. And what I've told you today is why it's actually important. Because his actions didn't just end when he fled to Russia. We've told you already that his actions, his courageous actions, might I add, have led to continued exposure of these injustices around the world. And for this day, because we stand for democracy, because we stand for peace, and because we stand for transparency, this House believes that Edward Snowden does deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
Raina, good. Elton. I thank the Prime Minister for her speech, and now to open the case for the opposition bench, could I call upon the Leader of Opposition? Hear, hear. Hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, today on side proposition, we've heard opposition. We've heard a lot of government saying how Edward Snowden actually deserves to have the Nobel Peace Prize because he has protected individual rights and how he has protected individual liberties. On side opposition, we actually see that that is not the case. We see that what Edward Snowden did was actually not promoting peace, and his actions were not actually promoting peace in a way that he actually created more conflicts in multiple levels, in terms of international levels and in terms of the society. And we also see that what government has been saying all the time on saying that how his achievements on bringing more exposure and bringing more transparency to the international community has gave him the criteria, falling into the criteria of obtaining the Peace Prize. We see that actually what he did, all of this transparency and all of this breach in security are actually contributing to more conflicts, and we see that he doesn't deserve to have the Peace Prize. Now on side opposition, on our opening house, we think that number one, he actually does not fall into the criteria of obtaining the Nobel Peace Prize. No, thank you. Second of all, what he did actually led to more conflicts and not peace. And third of all, how he created social instability within the United States of America. Now onto the first argument. We see that basically Mr. Edward Snowden failed to obtain this Nobel Peace Prize for a simple reason that what he did, what he believed in was actually not true. We see that basically he came out and exposed a bunch of documents saying that how it's going to bring more individual rights in terms of privacy, and it also tells us that how the American government is actually exploiting their rights.
Point, sir.
No, thank you. And we say that actually, even if we concede that the American government did something wrong, we still don't see how this stands. Basically, what Edward Snowden did was that, okay, I'm going to expose a bunch of documents saying how the American government did wrong, and what he did ultimately was to create chaos. We see that basically all of the transparency, all of this exposure that Tsai government has been saying actually led to conflicts because for the simple fact that we have boundaries for countries and we have national security, we have classified information for a reason that when countries have the right to share what they know, they also have the right to actually conceal and not tell somebody what they know. We see that basically what he did ultimately was that he broke all of these borders. He actually ultimately led to more conflicts by creating distrust between international community, which is my second argument, talking about how he created distrust between nations. We see that basically what he did was that all of these documents, once leaked, it led to a distrust between America and its allies and also other countries. We see that in terms of the EU, in terms of Asia, we have reports and we have countries complaining about America's actions. And before we move on, yes.
Sir, you have said that Edward Snowden has created conflict between various countries. However, isn't it true that these countries themselves have created the conflict by choosing to act in a certain way, and that by Edward Snowden is actually creating peace? Because unless these conflicts are put into the open, they cannot be resolved.
I thank you for the POI, but the thing is that what we on sample opposition see today is that all of these conflicts can actually be prevented. We see that in a way that the reason why national security and classified information has their value is because it's in a certain way a sense of national sovereignty. We see that basically what these classified information and all these top class information stand for is that they were made in a way they weren't supposed to let the public see for a reason. We see that basically all of these were just archives for the government of a particular country to actually say that what happened here, what happened there, and have a better idea of what's going on in the world. We see that by breaching all of these securities, by actually letting the international community knowing that what they did is number one, going to create distrust between nations, and second of all, which will be done by my second speaker, how it will create social instability. And we say that he created conflicts between nations because in a way that when he exposed all of this information, when he exposed all of these documents, allies or confronting nations come and say that you shouldn't do that. And we say that in a way, these conflicts emerged in a way that it was all of the root of the problem, everything came from the leak. We say that basically this harms greatly the international relationship between America and its allies and also other countries. We see that all of these conflicts are exactly why he doesn't fall into the criteria of actually claiming this Nobel Prize. He created conflict, he created chaos instead of peace. What Tsai government has been saying all along about how these conflicts must be resolved through exposure, we don't see how that works. We see that basically even without exposure, nations can solve all of these problems if they wish to talk to one another. We see that basically without all this exposure, without all this information, number one, the conflict would have never have emerged. Second of all, it wouldn't have created all of this instability and all of this conflicts and all of this hostility within the international community. And because of the fact that he created conflicts, and because of the fact that he does not fall into the criteria of actually obtaining the Nobel Prize, on side opposition, we are very proud to oppose to saying that Mr. Edward Snowden deserves and should obtain the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
I thank the Leader of Opposition for his speech. Now, to continue the case for the government bench, could I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister? Hear, hear.
Testing. Okay, so is this a good volume for everyone?
Yes.
All right, good. Okay. So today, as Leader of Opposition, I have heard two main arguments from our Prime Minister. Firstly, he is saying that Edward Snowden has created conflict by allowing the international community to know about things that upset them, that they wouldn't have known about if Edward Snowden didn't release it. Secondly, he says that Edward Snowden has violating national security and the right of the government to keep secrets from its people. Now, firstly, this idea that Edward Snowden has created conflict is just ridiculous, right? Because as you can see here, that Edward Snowden is the messenger. He has released documents from these agencies showing that what they have been telling the international community, what they have been telling their own legislature, what they have been telling the voters is incorrect. And it also shows telling us that they are performing these actions that we would consider immoral or wrong. So, as an analogy we could use, for example, would be the concentration camps created by Nazi Germany. Now, of course, the type of injustice and crime is different, and the severity is different, but we can see that there are two similarities that are important in this analogy. Firstly, that...
Point, sir.
No, thank you, sir. Firstly, the main difference is that the international community, especially during the earlier stages of World War II, did not really know about these concentration camps. And these concentration camps are something that the international community would obviously deem to be unjust and incorrect. And so, if we imagine, for example, that we have some kind of leaker, an Edward Snowden, that leaked information about concentration camps, would side government here come up here and tell us that this leaker who told us about concentration camps has sparked international conflict by increasing the dissatisfaction of the international community with Nazi Germany, and by, for example, if it had the effect of increasing, getting other countries such as the United States of America involved in the Second World War. Would you say that?
Right, so would you give the Nobel Peace Prize to the people who took pictures of Abu Ghraib prison? Would you give people the Nobel Peace Prize for WikiLeaks?
Thank you, sir. So, as you can see here today, the Nobel Peace Prize, if it wasn't obvious, is not just about action, right? It's also about results. And so, the people who performed those actions there did not achieve the same result that Edward Snowden did. Edward Snowden was more successful than these other people at bringing about progressive peace. Now, to wrap up our analogy, in this case we would say it would be ridiculous to say that the leaker who had leaked the information on concentration camps was violating sovereignty or had created conflict where there was none. In fact, we can see that the conflict was created by Nazi Germany itself. By building these concentration camps, Nazi Germany had created conflict. It was just that this conflict was not immediately apparent because other people didn't know about them. So that is the important thing, one of the important things that Edward Snowden did today that allows him to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. He let people know about these injustices. And so we say it is false that Edward Snowden has created conflict because he is simply the messenger. Now, secondly, this idea of national security and the rights and responsibilities of the government and the responsibilities of Edward Snowden, who is a government contractor. Now, some propositions tell us today that there is secrecy for a reason, and that governments have a legitimate right in certain cases to keep things secret from the people, from the voters. And here, today, in government does not deny that right. However, we say that in this case, this Edward Snowden did not violate those rights, did not violate those responsibilities. Why? Well, number one, we see that in this case, there was a fundamental breakdown in these systems of government. We know, of course, about the idea of how the different branches of government in a democracy, the executive, legislative, and judicial. And we can see in this case that the executive branch was straight up lying to the legislature. And that was, as Edward Snowden said, one of the major turning points for him deciding to leak the documents. One of the major reasons. Because the head of the NSA, head of spy agencies of the US, had gone up to public hearings, have gone up to private hearings, and gone to the legislature, and when directly questioned repeatedly, they straight up lied about what they were doing. They lied about the scope of the operation, then about the existence of certain operations, and we can see here that what Edward Snowden did, whether or not it is, for example, within the quote-unquote, within the system or within his responsibility, we can see that the idea of Edward Snowden's responsibility to continue to protect, for example, the right to secrecy of the government has been broken because the government itself has broken its responsibility. The executive branch of the government has itself broken its responsibility to the voters and to the legislature. And so this must be corrected, and Edward Snowden has helped us correct this problem. This is the second point on why Edward Snowden is helping push forward progressive peace. Because we can see that peace relies on such institutions such as democracy, and two of the foremost republics, two of the foremost representative democracies had this problem where the executive was straight up lying to the legislature, breaking this trust. And so we needed something outside of both the executive and this legislature to reveal this problem in order for us to fix it, in order for us to repair these democracies. And so this is, again, what we mean by progressive peace. Sorry. So, what have we shown you today? We have shown you that the arguments that the opposition has put forward explain why Edward Snowden does not deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. The argument that he had A, created conflict directly against peace, and yet that B, he is breaking the system and not using a more radical measure than side opposition would like. However, we have shown that in both these cases, what Edward Snowden did to garner this objection from side opposition is actually exactly why he is pushing forward progressive peace and deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. Now to continue the case on the opposition bench, could I call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition? Here, here.
Okay, now ladies and gentlemen, today we see a government bench which, well, they just want to praise everyone. Praise the people who did something, but not seeing what the result is. Now, they say that, well, Edward Snowden exposed what the government did wrong. However, we doubt it's a fact. Now, take an analogy. Now, the same way that you are dispersing seeds in the farm. Now, you disperse seeds on the right time, at the right moment. Now, what Edward Snowden is doing is that he's dispersing seeds during a drought or during the flood. It is not doing any effect. It is not helping the society. It is rather harming the society in which it causes instability, and which I'm going to expose it further in my speech. Now, what side government is doing is that it is aiming to award him for just dispersing seeds, but not about his result. Now, side government had told us that, well, we're going to look at the result. That is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to look at the results right now. We're going to look at what Snowden has caused. Now we see today, the government bench had been a very idealistic side. We see that we on side opposition will prove to you today that we are the realistic side by looking at what the society right now. Now we see that the problem he caused is never resolved. Okay, now to the problems. Now first of all, social instability. Now we see that what Snowden had done has caused social instability to the world, especially to America. Now we see that the government have confidential documents. They have confidential documents for a reason. Now we see that because oftentimes there is an emergency need, and when we say that when it is to be exposed, it has to be exposed at a suitable time. We don't think that what Snowden is doing is he's not exposing these documents in the suitable time. Now we see that what has this caused? This has caused a very big problem. That is that people no longer trust the government. We see that people lost their trust in the government, and that is one very major problem that is caused right now and not being solved. Yes, sir.
Sir, if you're saying that people are not trusting the government because of the Snowden leaks, how can you explain that the people should be trusting the government? Why does the government deserve to be trusted?
Okay, I see your point. So you are asking why the government should be trusted in this when the government is surveilling them. Now, I see that point, but we are looking at the results right now. We are looking at what has Snowden caused. Now, we don't see what Snowden caused peace. We don't see what Snowden caused is to make people to make this society a better place. Unlike your point, my partner has told you that this has caused international relationship worsen it. Like the example in Germany, between US and Germany. Now we see that this has caused a tense relationship between international community. We don't see that how Snowden has caused peace, how Snowden has caused stability to the whole world. Okay, now back to my point about social instability. Now I'm going to further explain that. Why is the society become unstable when people lost their trust to government? Now we see that it is when people don't trust the government, as the government is the main stakeholder in the society, we see that people are going to have an impact on the government when they do not trust the government. We see that grows social instability because people are not listening to what the government is saying because they think that the government is cheating on them. And we say that this is a very important result that Snowden has caused. People are distrusting the government, and what it caused is that people do not. Is that the society is no longer as peaceful as before. Now, what we say that is that we can see from other cases where the information are exposed in a suitable time. It didn't cause such a chaos. Now, we see that in many other cases, like like when the British leaked their documents about the World War II. It didn't cause a chaos because it was exposed at the right time, and we see that this is what Snowden should have done if he was about to get the Nobel Peace Prize, because that is what he should have done. He should have improved the peace in the society. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about the problem caused by Snowden's leakage to office materials. Now we see that if Snowden got his Nobel Peace Prize, what are people going to do? People are encouraged to leak the information at the unsuitable times because they see that Snowden got that prize and they want to get a share of it. Now we see that when people are exposing these documents at the unsuitable time, it is going to cause a much bigger chaos because Nobel Peace Prize is not only something that is local. It is something that is international. That goes around the world. Now we see that when people around the world expose things that should not be exposed at the right time, we see that this is going to cause a much bigger backlash than what Snowden has caused. Now we see that from this, and is that the effect will be huge. It is going to be worldwide, and that it cannot be stopped. We see that we don't want to see that, and we don't think that this is what a person who received Nobel Peace Prize should have done. Now we see that Snowden has caused more harm than good to the society. Snowden hasn't contributed to the peace to the society. Snowden is just exposing the things that he should not be exposing at that time, and therefore we are very proud to oppose, and we think that Snowden should not get his Peace Prize. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for his speech with comments, and to open the lower half of the debate, could I call upon the member of the government? Here.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, as members of the floor, as the government bench, we are proud to propose that Edward Snowden get the Nobel Peace Prize. But before going on, we would like to rebut a few points of the opposition made. First, they reverse the cause and the reason for this tense international relationship between USA and other countries, including their allies. This tense relations is caused by US having a spying and cyber war actions towards them. It's not by Snowden exposing the materials. This tension was already created and but just only hidden by US with those actions. But instead, Snowden just exposed it. And what the opposition was trying to suggest is that, well, since exposing them will cause instant chaos, we shall rather hide those information, hide them from the public, not letting them to know this violence, this cyber violence US is doing to our government, doing to our society. Yet, this is like building up a dam. When you are just building up you are just enhancing and forcing the dam when the water pressure builds up. Yes, eventually, no, thank you. Eventually, the dam will break down, and this is not what we would like to see. And therefore, no, thank you. And therefore, Snowden is the key, and his action is the key to release the stress and to progress peace for the world. And the opposition also raised a quite interesting idea, I rather say, of what is calling a right time and what is wrong time for exposing such information that affects not only our individual rights, but also the country rights and the sovereignty and our basic rights as a human. No, thank you. It is definitely important for us to know that the US government is violating our individual rights, and if they can get individual benefits, it's not always national security. How about the rights of the Germany government? How about the rights of the France government? How about the rights of the UK government? No, thank you. Okay, as our opening of government already said a lot of contributions about Snowden. Due to the lack of time, I would like to expand them. First, Edward Snowden, why is he going to progress to peace with his action? First, as I mentioned, they are releasing, by exposing this this information of violating human rights, it is releasing the stress in the society and exposes to us. And it is also, okay, please.
Well, don't you think releasing the stress from the society, like releasing the water from the dam, when you haven't evacuated the people who live under the dam, is the right time to do so?
What you mean is that we shall wait till the dam to break down, and instead also we are saying we are not evacuating the people. Yet we are letting those people to know the information, to know the danger behind the scenes, behind the bias of this evil action the US government is conducting toward us. And the important is that, no, thank you. US is our major power in the world, and they are, in fact, the largest and most powerful country in the world. And as the leader to this global safety, which we value currently, and contributes to the responsible to the UN and the global whole world, they shall instead take the lead of to protect this overall peace. And Snowden, by this action, they are tearing off US fake mask of being such a peaceful country, where in the back they are doing some dirty action towards other countries. And this, by releasing, okay, please go on.
So can you tell me how the people's rights before Snowden are anywhere less preserved than the people's rights now?
Thank you. Well, I'm saying that by Snowden letting people to know that US government is violating their rights, we are acknowledging that this action, we can, since US is a Western liberal country, we can and we will force government to correct its action and in order to keep global peace and progress to safety and peace. And this is what I'm going to explain. Like by telling us this action of US violating our rights, it will force the US government to reconsider and evaluate their decisions. And in addition, by Snowden having this action, it will give us a positive message to the global that these actions are incorrect. And as a and as a citizens of the world, we are definitely responsible for the overall benefits, and we shall definitely expose these unjust decisions to the public for the sake of the society. And due to all these contributions, it is definitely a recognition, and he well deserved to get this Nobel Prize. And the opposition also raised interesting point of somewhat U.S. government is not fouling, it's not crossing a border by spying the others, and I do not really understand that case since we already stated the actions done by U.S. are much more important and much more severe due to all the spying and violating human rights, and therefore due to all the contributions I've said and how severe the crime U.S. government is happening and his contribution on future preventing this from happening again, Edward Snowden is definitely deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for a progressive peace for the world. Thank you.
I thank the member of government for his speech. Now to extend on the opposition bench, could I call upon the member of the opposition? Hear, hear.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, two questions we have to ask today to summarize this debate, essentially. Firstly, what is the criteria in order for any person to win the Nobel Peace Prize? Secondly, does Snowden fit this criteria with what he has done? Okay, so let's move on to the first one. Now, the opposition team has basically presented us with an idea that because of progressive peace, somehow making people aware of the problem means that he has automatically made the world a better place. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we actually question this. They have not brought us a single tangible benefit and improvement to people's lives, which Snowden has brought. Ladies and gentlemen, what has Snowden done which has made people happier, which has made people live being in safety more? Have people been living in more peace because of Snowden? Now, we reject this idea that Snowden is actually the first person to ever bring up the fact that companies and big institutions and governments can spy on you. I will expand on this on my second point. When I make the differentiation that Team Opposition has never actually presented to us why exactly Snowden is different from all these other people who have actually leaked documents. Now, secondly, we believe that Snowden has not actually committed any tangible peace. People are no safer, no happier because of what Snowden has done. Just because you make people realize the problem, we believe that's not enough to constitute a Nobel Peace Prize, because everybody who has won a Nobel Peace Prize in the past has done something to change the status quo and try to solve the problem that they have presented. For example, when people have won the Nobel Peace Prize, no thank you sir, they have ensured rights for discriminated groups by improving their living conditions. When Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, he improved the living conditions, offering freer healthcare. He actively tried to make policies to make sure that people within his countries had a better standard of living. We question the fact that Snowden has done anything tangible and anything sustainable within the world to make sure that he is actually justifiable in winning the Nobel Peace Prize. No, thank you, sir. And therefore, because we think that he didn't actually solve a problem, and he is not the first person to make this problem dominant within society, therefore he does most certainly not meet the criteria of the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's weigh peace and tangible solutions to a problem against awareness of the problem. We don't think simple awareness of the problem is the result of Snowden alone, and certainly does not mean that Snowden will win the Nobel Peace Prize. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, but before I move on, yes.
Which?
Here.
The fact is, it's under Obama's leadership that the US is continuing spying on other countries, disrupting global harmony. So how are you to suggest that so clearly Edward Snowden is promoting peace?
Was Obama not the one who instigated investigations against the NSA when people made him realize that the NSA was doing something wrong? Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that when Snowden was the one who actually leaked the documents, we don't see how Snowden is any different from the documents in any way. So right now, I move on to the main thrust of the debate, right? What differentiates Snowden from all the other people who have leaked documents within this world? We believe that just because Snowden is the most publicized and high-profile person to have leaked documents, he is certainly not the only person to have leaked documents. He is certainly not the person who has leaked the most important documents simply because we have put a face to the documents we have leaked already. No, thank you, sir. So we say that, no, thank you, sir. We say that because something has public exposure, he has released the documents into the public, so have thousands of other people's via WikiLeaks, as my other speaker has already stated in a POI. We don't see the differentiation just because we put a face to the documents he has leaked. Is Edward Snowden actually worth any more than the documents? We don't believe that just because of the documents they have released.
Wait, ma'am.
No, thank you, sir. Which by their definition makes people realize that the world and the governments may be doing something behind their backs. We believe that a lot of other people have done this. We don't believe that Snowden was the only person to have done this. And therefore, no, thank you, sir. We need the other team to differentiate between these people before they can justify giving one single person a Nobel Peace Prize for building on the works of others as well. And therefore, we see that by sensationalizing and putting through the media all these documents as well, Edward Snowden does not actually make the world a better place. As already presented by my opening government, we believe that this basically hyper-sensationalizes the documents that he has released, because people focus more on the story of Edward Snowden running around from different countries, running from the government as a fugitive, rather than the documents themselves. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we reject the idea that Edward Snowden has caused an inherently better place when people are focusing on the person and not rather the documents, as the other team has made us to present as well. Ladies and gentlemen, just because somebody is the most reported person to have done this certainly does not mean that they have broken any ground, since people have released, and thousands of people continue to release documents in the past. We don't see how Edward Snowden has done anything groundbreaking to help the lives of people around them, and therefore we don't believe that he fits the criteria to win a Nobel Peace Prize. No, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, they have presented us with a point of bravery. How because he was brave, because he was the one who stood out against the government, that means that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't see how because he is brave, he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. We say that, okay, there's a reason, a bravery medal exists, etc., etc., and they have still failed to prove to us what exceptional thing that Edward Snowden did, rather than just go against the odds to believe that he is right. And because he has not completed a change to a status quo, he has not produced any tangible benefits. Therefore, he doesn't actually fit the criteria of what people see as a Nobel Peace Prize. So what does Snowden actually do to Nobel Peace Prize if a person is wrongly granted a Nobel Peace Prize? As no, thank you, sir. As we see in this model today, we see that this basically misrepresents the Nobel Peace Prize and lowers the thresholds for future Nobel Prize holders in the future. When we see that somebody who's simply building on the work of others, who simply publicizes the work that other people have already done, that a set of documents does not constitute a Nobel Peace Prize just by putting a face and hyper-sensationalism in the media to them, doesn't mean that Edward Snowden actually deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the Nobel Peace Prize is something that should only be granted to people if they offer tangible benefits to people's life. We don't see anybody in this world who is made happier or is made safer by the construction and release of Edward Snowden's document. Ladies and gentlemen, if there was a person in the future who actually made the government lower the registration, if there was a person in the future who actually made governments negotiate with each other to lower the thresholds of this private security, a person who instigated debate within the government, then we would grant this person a Nobel Peace Prize, because he causes policies and change within the status quo to protect people. We don't see that Edward Snowden is a person who has done this right now. We don't see how the releasing of documents can do this in the future. And therefore, we don't believe that Edward Snowden has done anything so substantiated and groundbreaking that he should deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why this motion must fall. Thank you.
I thank the member of opposition for her speech. Now to conclude on the government bench, could I call upon the government whip? Hear, hear.
Hello. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor. Today, we are witnessing a debate with the narrow-minded opposition. The opposition claimed that exposing the US government's secret of spying on its own people as well as its allies is generating social instability and chaos. Yet, the opposition simply neglects the nature of spying. What is spying? Spying is a military act, an act of hostility, rivalry against the victim. So clearly, as the US spies on its allies, spies on its people, it's actually generating this social instability, this mistrust between both parties. So, ladies and gentlemen, please understand the nature of spying. The fact is, the opposition simply suggests that the opposition used the so-called national security of the US government as a reason for why Edward Snowden should not deserve the Nobel Prize. And this simply does not stand, because the nature of the Nobel Prize is to reward the individuals or parties that promote peace, not only for the present, but for our future generation as well. And so clearly, as my member of the government has already mentioned, Edward Snowden is in fact encouraging peace among the world, not only the present, but the future. The fact is, as Snowden exposes these secret documents, exposing how the US government is having surveillance on its own people, it is in fact an act. It is an act of condemning the idea of disrupting global stability and global peace through spying. And so, please, the opposition must understand that the nature of spying is hostile. It is, in fact, the root of global mistrust, and therefore, Edward Snowden is, in fact, doing something that encourages peace. Yes, please.
Can you please stick to the reality that the reality is that the people right now are disrupting the government because Snowden leaked these documents out?
The fact is, the social instability, the instability that the opposition has been bragging about, is the instability within the chaos within the US government itself. The US government is scared because they've understood that the people is now mistrusting them because they are putting surveillance towards their own people. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that the US government actually understands the danger, the disruption that they've caused by themselves through spying.
Point, sir?
Yes, please.
You just conceded to his point. You just said, well, the US government knows that people don't like it spying on them, therefore it causes mistrust and causes social instability, and now the people do know, and that causes mistrust.
No. It's the point I'm suggesting is that the US government actually realized that spying causes mistrust between the US government, its allies, and clearly clearly spying is in fact reinforcing this mistrust and this chaos within the social order. And so what Snowden did is he stepped out and told the world what US did. And by doing so, it actually... Sorry, ma'am. By doing so, Snowden actually shows to the people around the world that how spying is in fact dangerous, how spying is in fact encouraging mistrust and chaos within the society. And therefore, what Snowden is doing is to prevent this from happening in the present and in the future.
Point, sir.
No, ma'am. And so, you pointed out that Obama took the Nobel Peace Prize because he'd improved health qualities, education, and stuff like that. The fact is, you must simply admit that Snowden has sacrificed a lot. He sacrificed his own freedom. He sacrificed his opportunity to even step into the land of the USA by exposing these informations on US putting surveillance on its people. And so clearly, Snowden deserves this prize because ultimately he is willing to sacrifice his freedom for the better good of the US society, for the better good of his country, for the better good of our future generations.
Point of information.
No, thank you. So what Snowden did is simply to encourage others, to show others how spying is disrupting global peace, and his actions is improving peace, not only improving peace for the global community. And as a matter of fact, by exposing these confidential information, it is in fact increasing the transparency of the U.S. government, and by doing so, it prevents the U.S. from daring to impose surveillance on its people in the future. And Edward Snowden is not only helping the present, it is helping the future, because he, as the one exposing the confidential documents of the US, has become a role model for our future generations. It simply warns to governments such as the US government, such as the Obama, the management, that it's simply unrealistic and it's simply wrong to spy on people. And for all these reasons, today's motion must stand. Thank you.
I thank the government whip for his speech. Now to conclude, for the opposition bench, this debate and indeed the entire tournament, could I call upon the opposition whip?
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we essentially think that this debate boils down to two main things. First of all, what is the Nobel Prize really about? And second of all, does Snowden fit this criteria? Does Snowden deserve to win the Nobel Prize? Ladies and gentlemen, we think that throughout this debate there have been two different characterizations on what the idea of the Nobel Peace Prize is about. On one side, we heard this idea that it's about bravery, it's about standing up for beliefs, and last of all, in closing, we heard it's about sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we essentially think that all three of these characterizations are flawed. We think, first of all, the idea of bravery brought on by opening government, ladies and gentlemen. We think this idea of bravery, okay, we think that yes, we do give prizes for bravery, ladies and gentlemen, but we think essentially in this case the Nobel Peace Prize is not about bravery. In that case, we would give Nobel Peace Prizes to every single soldier who fights a war, simply because he is brave. We don't think that's the case. We think the Nobel Peace Prize is for more than that. Secondly, we look at the idea of standing up for beliefs. I've already given to you in my POI. Standing up for beliefs doesn't make you win the Nobel Peace Prize. You have to actually create peace. No, thank you. We have told you that, okay, a soldier might stand up for his belief when he fights a war. We told you that Islamic terrorists stand up for their beliefs when they go bomb people. We don't think that they deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, even though, yes, we agree that they have stood up for their beliefs. Now, thirdly, we look at this idea of sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen. Well, under their paradigm, we would essentially no, thank you. We would essentially give prizes to anybody who sacrificed themselves for their country. For all the soldiers who fight in wars and die, they sacrifice their lives for their country. We don't do that, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think that the Nobel Prize is about this. What do we think that the Nobel Prize is about, ladies and gentlemen? No thanks. We think it's about allowing others a chance to change. We think it's about creating tangible, long-lasting peace, something that my member has already extended upon. We think it's about creating tangible, long-lasting peace. We look at all the examples of people who have won Nobel Peace Prizes. We look at Mandela, we look at Gandhi. We think that these people have created long-term peace for their country. They have secured the rights of their country in the long term. We think that human rights, no thank you, has improved a lot, has drastically improved in India, has drastically improved in South Africa. Because of their actions, we think that their rights have been secured for the past 20 years because of their actions. We don't think, ladies and gentlemen, we don't accept their characterization. We think it's about tangible peace. Yes, sir.
So you're negating the contribution bring up by the slogan of preventing further violence and promoting future peace.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, first of all, we don't see what Snowden has really done. Well, okay, has he really preserved any rights? Are the United States saying, we are going to stop spying on you? Has the United States really done that? No, they've sort of just said, okay, we'll brush this off, we'll continue. They haven't really done anything about it. And furthermore, we talk about this idea of, okay, it ensures future peace, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? You know, maybe he has averted a war, but we don't think we can hypothesize about this. I'll continue to go on to this on my substantive. Now, secondly, ladies and gentlemen, is the second question we think is also being central to this debate. What does Snowden really fit this model? Does Snowden fit the model? Does Snowden fit the criteria? Now, essentially, our opening house has given you this idea of conflicts. They have told you that as created conflicts, Snowden has done far from creating peace. Ladies and gentlemen, we essentially think that's, again, rehashing what they said, that Snowden has created internal problems and has created external problems through international conflict between two or more different nations. And we essentially think that, again, yes, they have created conflict that could otherwise be involved. Now, essentially, what closing told us is that, well, essentially, it's the spying that creates conflict, ladies and gentlemen. We're not really sure about that. We think that, essentially, when you spy on someone, it's kept hidden, so they don't know about it, so they can't really get angry about it. So we think, essentially, that, okay, yes, spying itself doesn't really create the problem. It's really you exposing the spying that makes them aware of it and gets them angry. So we think, yes, they have essentially created conflict. Now, secondly, is to this idea, ladies and gentlemen, of tangible change, which is what we have characterized down our bench. Ladies and gentlemen, that tangible change is what creates the Nobel Peace Prize. No, thank you. Now, we essentially look at this idea of tangible lasting change. Has Snowden really done this? First of all, we say not really. We say that right now, he hasn't really done very much in terms of preserving people's rights. We look in America right now, has the NSA shut down? Has the government stopped spying on its people? No, it really hasn't. He basically took the information he knew, he threw it out to the people and said, oh, look at all this information, look how terrible it is. You know, you guys better go create a revolutionary wave, and that hasn't really happened. In fact, if we look at the United States, the majority of people think that the United States government did something that was right. It is a small minority of people who actually agree with what Snowden did. So we don't think that, you know, the idea of rights has really been pushed forward by Snowden. We don't think it's really begun to ensure people's rights anyway. So we don't really see how this point stands. We don't really see how what Snowden has done has actually created any kind of change within the entire system. We don't see how it has given people's rights back. We don't see how it's like Mandela. We don't see how it's like Gandhi. No thanks. Now we look at the second point, which is what essentially closing has focused today on about. It's the idea of the US government. They've essentially characterized the US government as being really, really evil. They have told us that the US government is terrible and that what they've done is terrible and that Snowden was a great person by exposing it. But okay, first of all, that's arguable. Second of all, even if it's not, we think, you know, he hasn't really done anything that has stopped the US government from being super evil. No thanks. We think what's essentially happened is that people, again, repeating myself, people have essentially said, oh, this is really bad, but you know what, let's not do anything about it. They haven't really been doing anything about it. Yes, they may have discussed it, people may have talked about it, but we don't think that their rights have essentially been given back. We think that what Snowden did, as my member has extended upon, is create this entire sensationalist picture of what the United States has done. He had this heroic escape to Hong Kong and then to Russia, and what essentially he's really done is create a big story for himself. He hasn't really created any changes in rights. We don't think the US government is any different from what it was before. We don't think the US government is doing anything that was different from before. We don't think that Snowden fits this criteria. Yes, sir.
What side proposition is saying is that Edward Snowden deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because he has the first to provide tangible evidence of the NSA and GCHQ activities, and he was the...
Okay, but that is no change. Just because you provide evidence for it doesn't mean that their rights are being given back. Right? You can go and tell them, you know, something's going on. The guy who took a picture of Abu Ghraib said, okay, there's something going on here, but that doesn't mean he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because he hasn't really done anything to change the status quo. The status quo is still, the United States government is still spying on you. So we don't see how, you know, he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize in that way. So essentially, ladies and gentlemen, what this debate is about, it's about the characterization of two questions. First of all, what does the Nobel Peace Prize, you know, what does it contribute to? And we told you, ladies and gentlemen, that the Nobel Peace Prize is about causing tangible change. We have given you countless examples. We have given you countless counter examples of people who take pictures of things and show it to people but don't win the Nobel Peace Prize. Second of all, we showed you this idea that Snowden simply doesn't fit the criteria. We told you that Snowden is a person who, right, true, he may have exposed it, but he didn't really create any tangible benefits for his people. We don't think he gave the people's rights back. We don't think there's been any attempt by anyone else to build on what he has done and give people their rights back. We don't think he really has done anything tangible, you know, that deserves a prize as esteemed as the Nobel Peace Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, essentially, we think that Edward Snowden does not deserve the Nobel Peace Prize because he hasn't really done anything to deserve so. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very proud to oppose.
Across the floor, shake hands. I thank all the debaters for their speeches.